Helldivers 2 is one of the most hilarious and legally fascinating video games ever created. Inspired in large part by the film Starship Troopers, players enlist in the patriotic military of Super-Earth and then deploy to alien worlds across the galaxy to spread freedom and democracy, whether those worlds want it or not. But hidden throughout the game are countless Easter eggs that satirize how real-world government lawyers can act in bad faith to screw over the boots on the ground and prop up authoritarian regimes.
Look familiar?
And now that our Xbox brethren are finally able to join me and over 15 million Helldivers who've signed up to fight the Galactic War, it's the perfect time to investigate these hidden laws, how they work in the real world, and talk about that contract you signed to become a Helldiver. That's right, just like in real life, Helldivers 2 makes you sign a contract before serving in an active war zone. And just like my real-life fellow service members, very few recruits actually read it. But before we dive in, let me just say something I never get to say as a lawyer on YouTube. I'm the Scowl Owl, a licensed Super-Earth attorney. I'm your Super-Earth lawyer, and this is Super-Earth legal advice. So I'm gonna advise all you new recruits that watching 1 second beyond the cessation of my Super-Earth salute shall constitute your waiver of all game spoiler rights in perpetuity. So make yourself a nice cup of liberty. Because we're doing this one for democracy.
Activate the Battlefield Injury Simulator.
The Battlefield Injury Simulator. What the f is that? What is this? Oh! My throat! Oh no, my throat! My throat! Holy shit!
Grab that stim and patch yourself up.
Oh, bruh. What the f? Yo, that's kind of f***ed up, man. Hold on, give me that. All right, wait, hold on. Let me patch myself up before I bleed out here. All right.
There, good as new.
Man, f you.
You know, usually the old-timers think the new guys have it easier. And by the way, Semper Fi Bushido X Brown Gaming. Okay, this recruit just landed on Mars for boot camp, RIP Mars. And he was just taught a valuable training lesson in the most efficient way possible. Now, if this recruit had joined the military of today's United States, could such an outstanding training method ever be unleashed on doe-eyed recruits? No, absolutely not. This is aggravated assault in violation of Article 128 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Right? Let's just say it's not as clear as it might seem. Bear with me. Look, military training involves pain and discomfort. That's just reality. It has to. It's training at some level for war, probably one of the most painful and uncomfortable things a person can experience. There are all sorts of limitations on what kinds of force can be used on recruits. Virtually all of those limitations, however, are not written in any statute. Instead, they're established through orders and regulations that have been developed over time by the Department of Defense and various service branches. And they aren't designed to prevent pain and discomfort. They're designed to prevent abusive pain and discomfort that could lead to serious physical injury or death, or that just doesn't serve a legitimate training purpose. Service members today can still look forward to getting tear gassed or tased or thrown out airplanes with janky parachutes, depending on their training pipeline. It's all about balancing training value against the risk of harm. Operational risk management. So back to the Helldivers Battlefield Injury Simulator. Look, we would never shoot someone in the leg in order to train them how to use a tourniquet. The risk of harm totally outweighs the training value. But in the Helldivers Simulator, you have a computer that presumably is calibrated to do a very precise degree of damage, and you have a stim that magically rejuvenates you by the exact degree of damage. Good as new. So as long as the computer is calibrated correctly, the risk of harm is actually pretty low. And there is immense training value in developing a visceral trust in those stims working. A Helldiver who has that trust will have a tremendous degree of confidence going into real combat. I get hurt? One little poke and all's well. So could a Battlefield Injury Simulator be unleashed on US military recruits? I mean, given that hypothetical framework, yeah. If everything is calibrated and working correctly, sure. It's just kind of a big if. But no time to worry about that. This recruit isn't on regular Earth, where military contracts are typically signed before entering service. He's on a planet in the Super-Earth Confederation and hasn't yet seen the contract that I'm predicting he's going to agree to without even knowing it.
Hey.
You've proved your worth. You're ready to don your cape.
What is this? Oh, is this the terms of service? Contract of employment. Oh, God. Contract of employment. All right, I'm sure there's some stuff in there.
Pretty much the same reaction most recruits have. There is some stuff in there. He just agreed to a military service contract and didn't even read it. So let's go back. Okay, right there. I'm gonna note straight away that this contract is absolutely hilarious and very well written. Shout out to Stephen Flowers and the narrative team at Arrowhead Game Studios. This is a smart satire of draconian legalese that would make Franz Kafka himself smile, and it reads like the work of a legit contract attorney with a sick sense of humor. That's because legalese is more than just technical jargon, it's a strategy that bad faith lawyers use to make clear concepts sound extremely confusing. For instance, Section 1, Clause 3 of the Helldivers service contract states that dying is the non-continuation of the alive status, or having the absence of pulse. The contract goes on to stipulate that recruits' military duties include employing, quote, lethal force, non-lethal non-force, and lethal non-force. What does that even mean? We're going to come back to that one later, but this contract is a perfect addition to Helldivers 2's larger satire of authoritarianism. History is clear. Authoritarian regimes love to keep the illusion of legality going even when total lawlessness has broken out. By drowning everything in dry legalese, Super Earth High Command here makes their ridiculous, exploitative, barbaric, and nonsensical demands on enlisted Helldivers seem downright reasonable.
Continue your war efforts, and one day you too could reach Class A citizenship.
So not only is the contract a parody of what real law sounds like, but a parody of what quote-unquote law can force people to do when in the wrong hands. Look no further than Section 6, Clause 4, quote, the contract shall be considered binding upon being read, in whole or in part. For the purpose of any elimination of doubt, the enlisted spending 1 second within 15 meters of a copy of the contract shall be interpreted as the contract being read. This is really funny, but it raises a question. Could a lawyer get away with a term like this in a contract outside of Super Earth, let alone a military service contract? According to the Second Restatement of Contracts in U.S. law, the formation of a contract requires a bargain, in which there's a manifestation of mutual assent to the exchange and a consideration. Mutual assent basically means that both parties clearly and unambiguously agree to the same set of essential terms, constituting a so-called meeting of the minds. Now, normally, it is not a defense to contract formation to say, I didn't read the contract. Parties have a duty to read, and as long as your objective, outward conduct signals your agreement to the bargain, you're assumed to have read what you signed and are bound by those terms. But the Helldivers agreement turns this on its head. According to Section 3, Clause 3, you're forbidden from reading the contract in full at all, since doing so breaches the security rules concerning classified materials in Section 3, Clause 2. If you haven't picked up on it yet, the lawyers of Super Earth really don't have your best interests in mind. But who's got time to read the Helldivers contract anyway? Certainly not that recruit. He just earned his cape, and he's got bugs to squash, bots to dismantle, and squids to, gather valuable intelligence on aerial munitions from.
Hey, sorry to interrupt this patriotic and exceptionally democratic legal advice, but if you enjoy legal analysis of video games, movies, and TV shows, then you're gonna love all the exclusive original content that I and hundreds of other creators upload to Nebula, the sponsor of today's video. Nebula is an online streaming platform that my friends and I created ourselves, and it's the only place to watch the extended cuts of every video that we made this year, like the beatdown that Dr. Mike and I gave to The Good Doctor that contains 20 minutes of additional analysis that we had to cut for the YouTube version, or our exclusive video about the downfall of Supreme Court advocate Tom Goldstein, just to name a few. Plus, you'll get every LegalEagle video ad-free and early because I and hundreds of your other favorite YouTube creators always upload to Nebula first. So if you'd like to support this channel and its mission to demystify the legal miasma that we live in, a great way to do so is by signing up for Nebula. In fact, people often ask if it helps the channel more to watch on YouTube or Nebula, and the answer is emphatically Nebula. The watch time payouts are bigger, and since my creator friends and I created Nebula ourselves, we don't have to worry about capricious demonetization standards, which has been a huge problem this year. Whether we're talking about Epstein, Roblox, or Diddy, those videos are getting demonetized very, very often. So if you'd like to sign up, you can get 40% off your annual subscription, a year of the best content for just $36, or you can even gift that to a friend with a Nebula gift card. Or you can check out the lifetime subscription, where for $300 you get access to Nebula forever. Either way, get access to Nebula by clicking on the link below, or I'll see you in court.
You're ready to don your cape.
Oh, I get a cape? Let's go. See, bruh. Man, the Marines, they never gave us a fucking cape.
Sorry, friend. It's not available until you level up pretty high. It's called the Boat Cloak, and it's fabulous. Say what you will about Super Earth, at least they issue you a Super Destroyer. The rest of us have to go out after basic training and buy a brand new Ford Mustang at a 27% interest rate to impress that exotic dancer we're definitely gonna marry. So now that you've got your cool spaceship as a signing bonus, take a look at what's in store for you on the front lines.
Oh.
Oh.
I'm glad let these mines over.
Whoa!
That's crazy, Jake.
Hey guys, are we the villains?
No.
Look what we did. We just freaking. I mean.
Smells like predator stock.
Okay.
Welcome to the front lines of the Galactic War. You're gonna die a lot, mostly by the hands of your buddies or your own stupidity. In Helldivers, this is hilarious. But in real militaries, friendly fire is very much an unfortunate and tragic reality. In the US military, when friendly fire incidents occur, they're likely to be investigated. Occasionally, though rarely, those investigations result in criminal charges under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. The circumstances surrounding a friendly fire incident might comprise many different individual offenses chargeable under the UCMJ, but the clearest classic examples of friendly fire when death results might fall into the following three categories. Involuntary manslaughter under Article 119 of the UCMJ. This is basically, without the intent to kill or inflict great bodily harm, you unlawfully kill another human being by culpable negligence. And to be clear, culpable negligence is greater than simple negligence. It's a negligent act or omission accompanied by a culpable disregard for the foreseeable consequences to others as a result of that omission. So for example, negligently conducting target practice so that the bullets go in the direction of an inhabited house within range, or pointing a pistol in jest at another and pulling the trigger, believing but without taking reasonable precautions to ascertain that it would not be dangerous. Another is negligent homicide under Article 134. Basically, that means you kill another person by simple negligence. Simple negligence means you're not exercising a degree of care of the safety of others which a reasonably careful person would have exercised under the same or similar circumstances. And then last, the timeless little black dress of violent crime, premeditated murder under Article 118. You look back at all those videos, and except for the last one, you're looking at best negligent homicide. And I say that because in most of those circumstances, the other person is directly coming into the line of fire, which is their own form of negligence. That last one, absolutely premeditated murder, but come on, it was justified. He was expressing treasonous thoughts. Friendly fire incidents may be deemed simply unavoidable accidents of war, or sometimes the fault of commanders' poor orders or planning. Accountability is therefore determined on a case-by-case basis. A junior service member might be punished for his negligence, or a commanding officer might be disciplined for creating a confused situation that led to the tragedy. Crucially though, no service member signs a contract saying, "I accept all blame for all mishaps." Responsibility is assigned via the military justice process, not by a blanket indemnity favoring the brass. There's certainly no automatic presumption saying the lowest ranking soldier is at fault. Though, I mean, if you've been there, you'd probably be forgiven for thinking that presumption does exist. So how did the lawyers of Super Earth get around this? Well, they put the responsibility on you, Helldiver. Section 4 of the Helldiver contract that you agreed to states, quote, "Unless otherwise stated, the enlisted shall be solely and exclusively responsible for any and all damages, harm, liability, loss, costs, expenses, craters, atrocities, and crimes, civil, uncivil, war, caused, created, or generated during the course of the rendition of services." This is really something. These are the natural and horrific consequences of war, and you've just agreed to be personally liable for them. It goes on, quote, "Any damage sustained by the enlisted, whether reputational or corporeal, including but not limited to incineration, evisceration, spinal separation, vaporization, crushing, freezing, burning, decapitation, paper cuts, explosion, contusion, removal of arms and or limbs, addition of arms and or limbs, dizziness, nausea, shortness of breath and or death, shall not be considered the responsibility of the enlister." Great, so no VA on Super Earth. The contract leaves you with no recourse and no protection. And surprisingly enough, this has parallels in US law. The so-called Ferris Doctrine, announced by the 1950 Supreme Court decision Ferris v. United States, held that the United States is not liable under the Federal Tort Claims Act for injuries to members of the armed forces sustained while on active duty and not on furlough and resulting from the negligence of others in the armed forces. The Ferris Doctrine is broad and controversial, barring lawsuits even in peacetime training accidents such as botched live-fire drills. And in the US during the global war on terror, it shaped the legal outcome of a high-profile friendly fire case. Pat Tillman was an NFL player who dropped his lucrative career to serve his country in the Army, and unfortunately was killed in a friendly fire incident in Afghanistan that the Army first misreported as an enemy ambush. Even if the Tillman family had wanted to sue for negligence or wrongful death, the courts would have dismissed it because under the Ferris Doctrine, injuries or deaths incident to service, including combat misidentifications like Tillman's, are barred from Federal Tort Claims Act lawsuits. But the Helldivers contract liability waiver goes far beyond what any court would consider acceptable. Waiving ordinary negligence like Farah's is one thing, but here in Section 4, we're waiving claims even for intentional wrongdoing or gross negligence by the Super Earth command structure, essentially agreeing to be the fall guy for any wrongdoing on the battlefield. This implicitly covers friendly fire and explicitly covers war crimes. In Section 1.2, which defines certain services you may have to perform for the enlister rather than just at your own discretion, one of the tasks specified is committing summary executions, which is definitely a war crime. This means that if ordered to commit a war crime, you must obey, and it's still your sole exclusive responsibility. Great.
I'm not leaving without my comrades.
You just left.
Oh, wait!
And you just left.
I didn't know you had to wait. I'm not leaving without my comrades.
Honestly, this is more of a doctrine issue and less about personal responsibility. I think we should just blame the pilot.
Vad heter mycket jag sitter? Och tök flashmobs. Det är hleyp I áttina flashmob nu.
Oh shit, þeir okkur
Get trap, svona marg.
Sorry, ég var að binna leysetnum á þau.
Oh my god, slackið á.
Sorry.
Hvað að gerast?
Þeir eru fyrir mér, þessi lúðar.
Alveg sprekis.
I mean, let he who has not offed a few civilians while trying to kill aliens cast the first stone. It's also darkly hilarious that each instance of a civilian kill only costs you 150 R-slips. For all you new recruits, that's what you get paid in for your services as a Helldiver. And a 150 R-slip fine is nothing. There's no nuance here. You can just accidentally kill or straight up murder civilians and the fine is the same. And that's for killing your fellow citizens of Super Earth. But at least you don't have to worry about getting into any trouble for killing the civilians of the enemy. Because as far as Super Earth law is concerned, there is no such thing. Bugs don't think, bots are socialists, and squids, let's just say they don't vote, so they're not civilians either. And there's a reason why the lawyers of Super Earth set it up that way. Because this touches on one of the most difficult legal questions to answer for any military. How much is the life of an innocent civilian worth in a war zone? And what should the recourse be when that life was taken unintentionally? Since the Korean War, the US military has regularly dispersed what are sometimes called solatia or condolence payments, which are paid in accordance with local custom as an expression of sympathy towards a victim or his or her family, but are not an admission of any legal responsibility or liability. Deciding whether solatia or solatia-like payments are appropriate and the form they should take is made on a case-by-case basis each time the US goes to war. During much of the global war on terror, payments to most survivors of killed non-combatant civilians were capped at $2,500. Though in the early 2010s, Pentagon spokesman said condolence payments had grown to up to $5,000 per claimant. Now, nobody wants a military like the Super Earth Armed Forces, where all criminal liability falls only on the shoulders of the grunts, which is why international law adheres to the Yamashita principle. On September 3, 1945, Japanese General Tomoyuki Yamashita, or Yamashita if you're not a weeaboo, surrendered to Allied forces, and a US military-led commission charged him with failing to perform his duties as an army commander to control the operations of his troops, thus permitting them to commit atrocities. So the Yamashita principle holds that commanders may be held criminally responsible for the unlawful killing of civilians by their troops if they knew or should have known about the crimes and failed to act. This doctrine has since become a cornerstone of international humanitarian law. It's been invoked in modern tribunals, such as the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia and for Rwanda, where commanders were convicted for failing to prevent or punish mass killings of civilians. By extending liability beyond direct orders, the principle ensures military leaders cannot shield themselves from accountability when atrocities occur under their command. Now, obviously for the brass of the Super Earth Armed Forces, they've never heard of it. Don't want to hear about it. Sounds like treason.
Skepticism is treason. Treason is bad.
So using the super credits that you have earned through playing the game, you unlock war bonds. Now, just like battle passes, the war bonds will offer new unlockable gear, or how the devs call it, new toys to play with.
This actually hits closer to home than you might realize. Military service can be exceptionally challenging, and what can often make it even more difficult for the grunts on the ground is the never-ending barrage of microtransactions. Yes, that's right. Modern militaries are built on microtransactions. Similar to the real US military, the Helldivers contract puts you on the hook for a lot of costs and financial risks. Section 1, Clause 4 requires you to purchase, maintain, replace, and even improve all equipment used on the job out of your own pocket. So imagine your employer telling you that if you break or lose any of your essential life or death equipment, your tools, weapons, armor, even the space destroyer you're in command of, you have to replace it yourself. Can't afford it? Too bad. Ask mom to send you the $10,000 night vision goggles you lost instead of cookies. And a lot of this equipment is going to stay with your employer. Your heirs aren't going to get the gear you issued even if you paid for it. In Helldivers and the real military, you're bankrolling a fair amount of your own warfighting. It's no wonder that many grunts who love the job but dislike the employer leave the service and become PMCs or private military contractors. At least you get to keep the cool guy door kicker kit that you pay for.
Look at them! I love them! I would die for all of them! Oh no!
What does this button do?
If it hasn't dawned on you yet, everything in the Galactic War will kill you sooner or later. So you're probably thinking, get me out of this contract. Can someone actually get out of a military contract? Maybe. Courts have long acknowledged, at least since the 19th century, that military service is a contractual relation between the US and the enlistee, and that the general principles of contract law apply to those relations. This means that any defenses to a contract, say fraud, mistake, misrepresentation, can make the deal voidable. Fraudulent enlistment is actually a crime under the UCMJ and can form the basis for terminating the contract of an enlistee. But it also applies against the government. For example, in the 1980 8th Circuit case Pence v. Brown, Air Force recruiters incorrectly told a recruit that, following his completion of medical school, he'd enter the Air Force as a major. But then, in fact, he entered the Air Force as a captain. Because of this misrepresentation, the recruit was entitled to rescission of the enlistment contract. The best defense to a contract is that no contract was formed at all, because one of the essential elements was missing. As mentioned already, contract formation requires consideration, which means a bargain for exchange of value. This value could include payment, performance of some task, or even forbearing from doing something that one was otherwise legally entitled to do. Courts have famously held that even telling your uncle that you'll abstain from drinking, smoking, swearing, or playing billiards for money until your 21st birthday can count as consideration if he tells you that he's going to give you $5,000 in exchange. Now, Helldiver recruits are definitely giving up something of value since they're risking life and limb for Super Earth's military. But what is Super Earth giving up as consideration in the supposed bargain? Allegedly, they're promising to pay you money. But if we look a little closer, we find what contract law calls an illusory promise. The rule is this: words of promise, which by their terms make performance entirely optional for the promisor, do not constitute a promise. Your enlistment contract is full of illusory promises. Section 2, Clause 1 says your compensation is set by schedule in Appendix A. But Super Earth Armed Forces, quote, reserves the right to, at any time and with no prior notice, make amendments to the schedule of payments. Under this provision, even though we might serve heroically and earn enough medals to buy a pocket-sized nuclear bomb, Super Earth Command could just say, hey, thanks, but we've decided not to actually pay you after all, and they wouldn't even be in breach. Based on this text, it looks like the military can up and decide to cut soldiers' pay or even reduce it to zero whenever it wants and without telling them. If one party's supposed promise is so indefinite or discretionary that it doesn't actually bind them to do anything, it's illusory and simply doesn't count as valid consideration.
Firstly, and most importantly, you need to make sure that the safety is off. On PC, you hold R and right click to swap the mode. There you go. Now your railgun's unsafe and you can do this. Awesome.
Hey look, they issued that Helldiver a 6-hour P320. Okay, if you don't get the joke, the US Armed Forces derived their new service pistols, the M17 and M18, from the 6-hour P320. The P320 and lately the service pistols have a reputation for randomly discharging rounds. 6-hour, of course, disputes this. It's a whole thing. In the Helldivers contract, we're basically consenting to become a government guinea pig. Section 6, Clauses 1 and 2 specify that we consent to the collection of personal information and bodily samples, including but not limited to flesh, bone, and blood, by the military. And by consenting to Clause 3, we give our unequivocal and irrevocable consent to the use of experimental weapons and narcotics on us.
Dude, get up. We're getting swarmed by turbinates. Wait, are you high on stims again?
I can stop anytime I want.
You're covered in stim needles. What's wrong with you, man?
It can happen to the best of us. So that means that the military is going to also test its new experimental wonder drugs on you, whether you like it or not. But don't worry, 9 out of 9 doctors endorse Super Earth combat stims. Plus, they're a great source of vitamin D.
That's vitamin D for democracy.
This seems beyond the pale, but unfortunately, it's not without some historical precedent. During the Cold War era, Army officials, in conjunction with the CIA's top-secret MKUltra program, tested the effects of LSD on unwitting, non-volunteer soldiers, some of whom predictably freaked out, and some of whom even tragically died. Even on outrageous facts like these, the aforementioned Ferris Doctrine, which says that service members can't sue the government for injuries sustained incident to service, can bar suit. In the 1987 case United States v. Stanley, the Supreme Court recounted the upsetting tale of Master Sergeant James B. Stanley, who was secretly administered LSD multiple times in 1958 during an Army testing program, leading to psychosis and lasting hallucinations, periods of incoherence, memory loss, and sudden violent outbursts which ended his marriage. Now, Stanley had volunteered to participate in experimental testing, but it was reported that the test was for the effectiveness of protective clothing and equipment as defenses against chemical warfare, not to be drugged. Under Ferris, however, Stanley couldn't recover damages from the government. Maybe the Helldivers contract guinea pig clause is actually an improvement on this. At least it's giving notice up front that the Super Earth military might test some really wild stuff on you. Ah yes, a rifle firing humane stun rounds, where reports of lethal incidents have been thoroughly debunked. Meanwhile, it is shredding aliens. The US Department of Defense defines non-lethal weapons as weapons, devices, and munitions that are explicitly designed and primarily employed to incapacitate targeted personnel or materiel immediately, while minimizing fatalities, permanent injury to personnel, and undesired damage to property in the target area or environment. Non-lethal weapons are intended to have reversible effects on personnel and materiel. So what's missing from that definition? Anything that would lead someone to believe that a non-lethal weapon is incapable of killing someone. Because I mean, look, just about anything can be a lethal weapon with enough skill, imagination, and perseverance. A motivated sergeant could use a soup spoon to devastating effect.
Managed democracy. The freedom to make the right choice.
So what are we all fighting for, Helldivers? That should be obvious. Democracy, freedom, our way of life galaxy-wide, paved with the skulls of those who died. And this is the true genius of the satire at play in Helldivers 2. Voting throughout the Super Earth Empire is handled by citizens filling out a quiz, and then the algorithm votes for them, allegedly. This is obviously election fraud, but everyone's totally cool with it. They even call it by its real-world name,
Managed democracy.
While more accurately called competitive authoritarianism, managed democracy is a real-world political, legal, and cultural system where the structures and rituals of democracy and the rule of law, such as elections, legislatures, courts, and a free press, still formally exist, but they're tightly controlled by those in power. The term is often associated with Russia under Vladimir Putin, who would be the first to tell you that he's not a dictator. Elections exist in Russia, independent courts exist in Russia, and people just really like him. To be brutally honest, Vlad, everyone knows that the election results in Russia are manipulated through state control of the media, harassment and imprisonment of the opposition party, computer hacking, and even just straight up fraud. And what Helldivers 2 gets so right here is that the military is always the bedrock of a managed democracy system. Just look at all the cool stuff you get when you sign up to join the Russian military. Never mind the forced conscripts, never mind how ill-equipped Russian soldiers are to meet the enemy, or how often soldiers are treated like fodder. And look how drenched in patriotism it all is. These are real-world Helldivers spreading managed democracy, and it's ugly. And that's what makes managed democracy so insidious from a legal standpoint. You don't need a revolution, you just need to flip the traditional rule of law to rule by law. When the rule of law applies, everyone is generally equal under and accountable to the same laws. In the military, this means that everyone from the lowest ranking private to the highest general are subject to and prosecuted by the same code. Rule by law, on the other hand, turns the law into a tool for those in power to weaponize the law against their enemies. In a rule by law system, judges are often appointed for loyalty rather than merit, and courts may be pressured to uphold sham elections, grant validity to lies about elections, punish ethnic and religious outgroups and immigrants, or punish dissent through defamation lawsuits and censorship. It boils down to Wilhoit's law. There must be in-groups whom the law protects but does not bind, alongside out-groups whom the law binds but does not protect. No true democracy is ever immune from slipping into the horrors of Super Earth and the Super Earth Armed Forces. But what do I know? I'm just a humble, country Super Earth attorney, and that sounds like treason talk.
That's a great point. And if you or a loved one has been harmed by the Super Earth Armed Forces, you may be entitled to compensation. Luckily, I know a guy. Now, all this highlights why it's so important to get a great lawyer when you're dealing with your own case. Now, after I started this channel, every week I'd get hundreds of comments and emails from viewers who are dealing with legal problems. And they'd ask, can you help me find a lawyer? Or how do I know if this attorney is any good? And there's a massive gap in our justice system. It's that people don't know how to find the right lawyer for their specific situation. They're scared, they're overwhelmed, and they end up doing nothing or hiring the first attorney who calls them back. And that really bothered me. So I started to wonder, what if there was a different way? What if we could build a law law firm that actually lived up to the values that I talk about on this channel: transparency, accessibility, and putting clients first instead of chasing billable hours. A firm where you don't need to pay anything up front, and your lawyers only get paid if you do, to maximize your opportunity for justice. So a few years ago, I decided to fix that problem. I decided to start my own personal injury law firm. And honestly, it wasn't an easy choice. But I realized I was in this unique position. I had this platform, this community, and the experience. Not to get rich, trust me, there are easier ways to make money than starting a law practice. But we did it because access to justice shouldn't be a luxury. Because finding the right legal representation shouldn't feel like playing Russian roulette with your future. And when you work with my firm, you're not just getting a lawyer. You're getting a team that understands that behind every case is a real person with real stakes. If we can't represent you, or you're in a state where we don't practice, we'll take the time to try to match you with an attorney in my personal network of lawyers. A national network of some of the best lawyers in the country who actually specialize in what you're going through, located right where you are, not just whoever happens to be available. So if you're dealing with a personal injury, a car crash, a data breach, sexual harassment, a social security or workers' comp issue, give us a call at the number on screen or click on the link below. Now, I can't represent everyone that watches this channel. I wish I could, but what I can do is make sure that when you need legal help, you have somewhere to turn to that you can trust. So whether it's me handling your case or the incredible attorneys we partnered with, you'll get the same principles of honesty and education that we bring to every video. And if you're dealing with a legal issue and you're not sure where to start, check out the link in the description. Let's have a conversation about how we can help you find not just a lawyer, but the right lawyer for your situation. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, making sure that when life gets complicated, you don't have to face it alone. Which is why when you need a lawyer, you don't just need a legal team, you need the Eagle team.